Hey, Echo and Electric Essence. Yes, this is real. Now, to be clear, I'm not actually. We're just here to cook. All right, I'm not here to serve a dish. All right, we're not eating. We're just cooking. Um, this is not going to be sitting here like developing and building things for the mod. It's going to be here discussing how to build and develop things for the mod and laying out the framework to reference as we develop it. Sorbet is a frozen dessert. It's like a blended up fruit and water. Yeah, another cooking stream. You said you want to play Nintendo, you won't be able to play it? Who knows, maybe if we do a good enough job, Relaunch could be like, hey, shit, we should just do that for the 1.4.5 crossover. Just take it. Who knows? Shit. It's like vegan ice cream. Yeah, kinda. So, to start with, I'm going to go with a description of the people who are going... For the people who are going to be building structures and rooms. Basically, this mod is going to work by piecing together rooms, which are going to be predetermined areas that we have built in a random order. And those rooms will generate a level. This is similar to what TerraCells did, but we are going to do a more complicated version of it. TerraCells was effectively linear. You just got from the beginning room to the boss, and how you got there was randomized. What we're going to do is allow for branching paths and multiple exits to an area. So to do that, we're going to do the same organizing rooms in a row. So we start in a predefined area, and then the next room is pulled randomly from the pool of possible rooms, and let's say it has one exit. It pulls another room from the pool, but let's say that room has two exits because it's a branch room. That room will now spawn a new path that's going to be followed until completion, and it might have another branch room in it and make a whole looping area. And then eventually it'll come to an end room. And when that end room happens, then it's going to go back to the original branch path and continue generating that until the whole area is generated. Non-linear in the sense that you will not need to just go through a room. I mean, linear is fairly clear. Non-linear just means it's not linear, right? There's not the start point and the stop point, and you just go through rooms in a path to that. There will be branching paths potentially to alternative exits or to treasure rooms, to NPCs where you could like buy things at a shop. Let's have new items, just vanilla. The current plan is to implement a functional version using Terraria's vanilla items, and then depending on how that goes, we can add on to that later. But the focus right now is on keeping things more vanilla in order to keep the system simple before adding on complicated new items that might change the dynamics. I don't want to get bogged down with ideas of possible additions rather than just... I want to make a functional system first, right? And as part of that, the people who are going to be working on building, you will need to go to the Steam Workshop and make the structure, get the structure helper mod. I'm also using Dragon Lens. I don't think you strictly need Dragon Lens to save the structure helper things, but Dragon Lens is like a cheat sheet mod that helps you with getting items and modifying the world in a consistent way. And also lets you get the items from structure helper. But structure helper is how we're going to be saving the rooms that will be structured together. Yeah, I mean, there's so many vanilla items. We don't need to add new items. We can just change how things work. So I'm going to give a brief tutorial of how to do that. I'm getting a bunch of DMs on Discord. Okay. Hold on. Let me get these things sealed. So, you're going to need to build a structure. And that structure is going to need to be saved using structure helper. So let's build just a dirt structure here for the sake of showing this off. Each one of the different regions is going to have the modifier mod being TerraCells. I'm going to decide on what exactly the framework for the mod is going to be as we play. We'll build a little dirt house here. This is our house. This is incredible house. This is what we'll use for the mod. Each area is going to have a guideline for saving the rooms to make sure that they match up correctly. For instance, if we are having a surface world, each of the rooms should have the same number of blocks beneath them so that they line up correctly, right? If every room goes 5 blocks down, then they'll be sure to line up properly at their edges. But once we figure that out, you'll need to get structure wands, which are an item added by Structure Helper. I just got them from Dragonlance. So you can probably get them from another cheat sheet mod. They're here. This structure wand is what lets us save structures. So we're going to select a point. You might want to turn on the mechanical lens for this to make sure it works exactly how you want it to. Actually, I suppose... Oh, no, mechanical lens, yeah. This will let us see exactly where the points are. Wait, no. Mechanical ruler. Mechanical ruler. There we go, that's the one. So let's say we save the top corner of this structure down to the bottom corner of the structure. Have you seen that Stardew Valley roguelike from Habu? I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. So, we now have this structure selected. If I right-click, I can save it as house. And it'll be saved as a file in My Games under Tmod Loader and Saved Structures. So, when you make a room, you're going to need to select it using the structure wand, highlight around it, and make sure to follow the guidelines for size for each area to make sure they'll line up correctly. And then you'll save it, and we can just pass that file on to the coders. And they can take care of it. So, that is the brief overview of how we're going to be getting these rooms lined up with each other. The next question is... sure, shoot him, Zyla. What are we going to have the world layout be? What are the levels going to be? Can anyone submit a room? So, the building side of it, right now, I have a server, the TerraCells server, where I have people working on the mod, and I'm having some people create samples for aesthetics for areas. As in, this is a room, what one room might look like, and then I will have people base the aesthetics of future rooms off of the sample room, in terms of lighting, block choices, to make sure that things are aesthetically consistent. Because I think that's quite important for something like this. If anyone could submit rooms, then they might be aesthetically inconsistent, which would look weird. If you want to join the building side of it, send me a DM on Discord, and I can invite you to the server. Is it possible with a way to do multiplayer? I don't know, Zyla. I mean, probably. But I'm not going to commit to trying to get multiplayer to work before we've even gotten single player to work. Like, it's probably possible to make a multiplayer iteration of it that would function. But we don't even have a functional version at all. So I don't want to say that there will be a multiplayer version or there wouldn't be a multiplayer version. Multiplayer networking is hell in digital form. How would that even be balanced? I mean, it probably wouldn't be that balanced, but I mean, it's a multiplayer. Like, it's a mod to begin with. you can just be like, it's easier with friends. Or just have some kind of scaling thing. There are ways to work it out, but I'm not going to worry about multiplayer. It's best to plan multiplayer in advance. Retrofitting it can be harder than having it in the first place. Is normal Terraria multiplayer? It is. I mean, I feel like for retrofitting it, you would just... Well, there could be difficulties with players going down different paths, Mahumis. Like, players getting left behind in a world or things like that. But, like I said, I don't want to... Yeah. When we have a minimum viable product, we can plan for multiplayer. But, I think the more important plan is... Well, it doesn't have to be exactly based off of Dead Cells cloth. Like, it's inspired by Dead Cells, but it doesn't just have to be literally Dead Cells. You said you want to take this in a Dead Cells direction you have played. How exactly does Dead Cells work? I got a great way to show you. Let me just go launch Dead Cells. Hold on. We can just play a little bit of Dead Cells to show off what exactly I'm talking about here. And again, this is inspiration, not literally trying to copy exactly this. Is Dead Cells on the Steam Summer Sale? Yes, it is currently $12.50 on the sale, I believe. It's normally $25. I've only got about like 2 hours here, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time playing Dead Cells. But the idea is, we are here. We spawn in on a 2D world. We are able to run and move around. And you see on the bottom, we have equipment slots, right? I'll turn this down just for the sake of being simple. I have 5 boss cell unlocked. I want to take a simple version of this. Go Astrolab? That would take way too long. I don't have the time for that. This is a good example. Okay, so. We have multiple different items here. We have a sword. We have a thrown glaive. We have a thrown grenade. And we have a big death orb type thing. You'll notice how each one of these has a different color. There's green, there's red, and the glaive we have is both red and purple. Those are basically the weapons class. There are brutality, tactics, and survival. And basically, as you go throughout the game, you collect scrolls that buff that specific weapon type. Or that specific damage type, rather. I'll see if I can find a scroll. And we're just going through using these weapons to kill enemies. And as we kill enemies, you'll notice they're dropping coins that we pick up. I'm going to keep going until I find something else to talk about regarding the development. Will I move the 400 max mana cap? Okay, here's another example. HP. I feel like in a mod like this, I would not have Terraria's natural HP regeneration system, because natural HP regeneration in a roguelike mod, in a roguelike period, is not typically how things work. You typically find items to recover your HP. And Terraria already has hearts that drop. It's got healing potions that you can use. I mean, I know it's possible to play or to implement no HP regeneration because, I mean, I've played that way before. I've had a modified client that was able to do it. And I think having damage be non-regeneratable and require getting items from enemies either in drops or in healing potions. Some do, like Risk of Rain 2. I mean, Risk of Rain 2 is like the only one I can think of that does that. This here is an elite enemy. He's got a star above him. A system like this, essentially, this enemy is going to be more difficult to kill, but is going to drop a reward when we kill them. He drops a Scroll of Power. Or at least, maybe it wasn't an elite enemy, maybe it was just a guy that had a scroll. But these are how we upgrade our stats. And we basically get the option to add 15% damage, and it's a multiplicative damage. It's not an additive one, which makes it pretty nutty. It also buffs your max HP. But essentially, we're choosing to specialize in a class here. And I'll choose Survival to buff our sword. Our sword now has 15% better damage. And as you go through the game, you collect more and more of those things, and you're essentially specializing in a class. Here's another weapon, Twin Daggers. The thing is, we can only carry 2 weapons at a time. We can't just carry as many weapons as we want, and we'll likely implement a similar system in TerraCells to prevent the player from just accumulating as many weapons as they want. The thing with weapons is that all of these weapons are quite different from each other and have unique effects. And that is a core part of why I think it would map well onto Terraria. Because Terraria has a huge number of weapons, and those weapons have unique effects or can be given unique effects. These Twin Daggers inflict a critical hit on the 3rd strike. So it kind of has a 1-2-3 combo. The 3rd one will be a crit. Our Seismic Strike, the weapon we started with, has a shockwave attack along with a unique attack pattern, and that shockwave attack causes enemies to get stuck in place. They get rooted. And this Laser Glaive bounces around and deals critical damage when it bounces. And the items we have a Grenade, which is basically just a grenade, and a Death Orb, which is, I mean, kind of like a Nebula Blaze, Nebula Arcanum. Each one of them has unique effects, but you can only carry a limited amount with you, and they fit into different classes. So, you would get different weapons. Arcanum? Okay. You would get different weapons, and you would choose which weapons to take with you. So in this case, I'm going to keep what I have now, because I specialized into survival. You get things like permanent gameplay upgrades. Like, I know it's not technically a roguelike, but I think Summoner would be possible in a mod like this. I think how I would implement Summoner is... Terraria has accessories, right? Dead Cells does not. Dead Cells has a pendant you can equip, but that's not really an accessory. And I think I would use accessories to be accessories, but what Dead Cells does have is skills, and these are our bombs. And I feel like summoning weapons would be best implemented as a skill, which is essentially a support for your regular weapons. Dead Cells has summons, which are basically a weak creature that you can have accompany you. It's not always weak, sometimes it gets stronger. Becoming the mod is going to be better than Dead Cells? Yes. Absolutely. I feel like Summoner, because Summoner on its own is kind of a half-baked class in terms of weapon diversity compared to the other classes, I don't think implementing Summoner as a full-fledged class in the mod would work well. I think just having summons be available as something that follows you around, benefiting you while you use your regular weapons would be a better way to do it. You have a need for a banded region, it's working away where it only works like the Holy Protection when you need to hit enemies. Maybe whips could be more powerful. I don't know. I just don't think Summoner would work very well in something like this. Like, the whole idea is weapon diversity, right? Your weapons have a bunch of different effects, and you have a bunch of them available to you. Summoner just doesn't have that, right? Basically, every whip in the game functions the exact same way, and there's a lot of overlap between minions and just not that many minions. I think it would be better just to mostly ignore Summoner because it's not really in the same position as the other classes. You have Whip and then the next better Whip. Yeah, I mean, like, you could give the Whip special effects or things, but at the end of the day, I just don't think implementing Summoner would work super well. Okay. So here is the map of the level so far, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. If you consider that yellow room down there, or I guess the room to the right of the yellow room, to be a fork, where we have a branching path. We have a path that branched off to the left there, and a path that branched off to the top. And this top left path ended with this gate to the toxic sewers. There is another path down there that instead is going to branch off to the Promenade of the Damned. So this area has multiple exits, essentially, that we could go to. What if we just replace brutality, survival, and tactics with melee, range, and magic? I mean, yeah, that's basically the idea. That's why I'm doing this. It's because Terraria already has the class system. What is this? Magnetic grenade. Oh, hello. Different routes are a common thing in traditional roguelikes. Yeah, I know. But it's not a thing in Roguelike, the existing mod. So I'm pointing it out as an option here, because people might not be familiar with roguelikes in general. Here's an example. That room had a special reward for completing it, some money that we got. So in contradiction to something like Roguelike, where it's just a linear system, we had a reward for going down there, killing those enemies, and getting the stuff out of that room. You can already see TerraCell biomes, like choosing between Corruption or Crimson. Yeah. I'll get more into that when I get to the planning stage in a little bit. But Risk of Rain 2 is the Lunar Portal lets you choose your path. It does, yeah. But that's not the same as having multiple options within one stage to begin with. Here. Parrying is a thing in Dead Cells, and I'm not sure about implementing that. There's a shop up there. Okay, that's a good example when we get there. Here's an example of a room where it would basically be a side room. Here we could break these, or we could buy them to get special items. Something to spend our money on as a side area within a level. Pairs are too much for a mod. Yeah, it would be cool, but it's a lot to implement, and it would be a pretty drastic system. Every Terraria mod that tried to implement it did it horribly. Yeah. This is a shopkeeper, where we can buy equipment, and the way this would be implemented in the mod is realistically an NPC, or some similar interface, where you would find them in a level, and you'd be able to exchange the money you've picked up from killing enemies there. Here we could get an Ice Grenade, which applies a freeze debuff. You'll also notice that every single one of these items has additional effects underneath it. Those are their Reforges, which is a system echoed in Terraria with the Reforge system. These ones have more specific effects than just modification of outright stats. We're looking into implementing a system like that. But the idea is weapons, even the same weapon, will have different auxiliary effects that will make it function differently. So our Seismic Strike can't be interrupted by an enemy's attack, and it shoots an arrow in front of it. The Infantry Grenade spawns guys when it kills people. The Laser Glaive does additional damage to rooted targets. The Death Orb spreads inflammable oil on the enemy, and that's an idea that I quite like, because oil is already implemented in Terraria, but the oil debuff is extremely underwhelming. And we could add additional ways to apply the oil debuff and synergies with the oil debuff. Like the Volcano Sword might explode on contact with oiled enemies, as opposed to just doing it every single time that it hits. And that explosion could have a more drastic effect. Would this be underground based or above ground? It would depend on the level. Some are underground, some are above ground. I mean, just like Dead Cells itself. Okay. This is probably going to lead us to the end of the level. There's another scroll of power down there. And this is where we get a choice. We can either continue buffing the stat we already took, survival, or we can go in to try to buff a different one. Would there be some sort of final boss? Yeah, there would be a final boss. So the current other movement buffs in Dead Cells, you get runes that let you do things. There were ways to get additional double jumps. You have a dash, or a dodge roll to begin with, and you can also get a rune to climb walls. And you also get speed buffs for killing enemies. Makes you go faster, kind of incentivizes going fast. The current plan for the mod is to implement a functional, small-scale version of it, which would likely be essentially pre-hard mode progression and have the mod try to echo Terraria's pre-hard mode progression in a roguelike way. Essentially, you would start in a forest, and you would go through multiple biomes. You would be able to go choose different biomes to go down, and they would be each be their own level, and you would end up in the underworld and fight the Wall of Flesh. That's the Ironclad from Slay the Spire. Virus. Once we have that functional, I would consider fleshing it out and adding more complex things, but I am not going to entertain those ideas too much until we have the functional prototype. Once we do that, it's entirely possible that defeating the Wall of Flesh could enable a hard mode of sorts, where new biomes and a whole new ending is unlocked. It's possible we could implement macro progression, where you would obtain different movement options that would allow you to access secret areas in levels that you couldn't before. Things like ninja climbing gear to be able to climb walls, or a modified grappling hook that's able to grapple onto certain items, like how the squirrel hook grapples onto trees, or a lava charm to allow you to go through lava in areas where it otherwise would have killed you. But, like I said, until we have the functional base, I'm not going to get too worried about concepts like that. Maybe boss cell type thing. It's possible, Surblaz. But, like I said, that's something I think you would implement after you have the functional prototype. Will potion be in the mod? I think so, yeah. You would essentially just have, well, potions. Terraria has potions. You would start with a potion, and there might be some system to recharge your potion, or just give you a potion on each level. Since your HP is non-regeneratable, having a potion would be quite important. The most exciting part of development is I was talking about the concept and potential ideas. Yeah, there are definitely ideas to float, but I don't want to get too bogged down with what could be before we make what is. A dodge mechanic. I considered the concept of a dodge roll or a dash, and I'm still considering the concept, but it will be I would want it to be implemented in a certain way. I think Terraria's default dash system is trash. Is it going to be an OST? I've had a few composers reach out to me, people that might be interested in making music for the mod. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. I also know somebody personally that might be interested in making music. Double tap? No, it would be a keybind. Maybe edited Master Ninja Gear that gives iframes for a few frames. I mean, I think iframes would be important. But I would give the dash a dedicated keybind if it were to be implemented. Iframes, and it would need to flow well within the game, is the thing. That's the most important thing. Like, there's a dodge roll in Dead Cells because it works in Dead Cells, but Terraria is not Dead Cells, and if something akin to a dodge roll doesn't work well within the mod, then there will not be one. I'm not going to be attached to the idea just because Dead Cells has one. ammo variants, I think it's more likely debuffs like that would be applied by particular weapons rather than having ammo variants, Raz. Or, depending on the reforge of the ranged weapon, it would apply a different ammo. Would knockback resistance be a default? I'm not sure. Okay, let's keep going on the level. Our class will be based on 3 in Dead Cells or the Terraria? Oh, the Terraria classes. Would I have built-in item synergies? Yeah. I mean, we've built-in item synergies here already, just with... Okay, we'll go to the promenade. We leave the area. There were 3 possible routes we could have gone down to leave, and we're going down this one. Because this is an outdoor area, and I feel like that's a good example of things. There are doors here, where if we completed challenges on the previous level, we can go in them and get extra loot. If we got through the level in 2 minutes, that door would be open, and if we got through the level killing 30 enemies without taking damage, this door is open, which we did do. I would like to implement a system like that, where not necessarily you go through it within a certain amount of time, or you get through it killing enemies without taking damage, but you would be able to complete some challenge in the level for a reward at the end of the level. Would subclasses be viable? Yeah. Would cursed accessories be a thing? I'm not sure. So this weapon deals plus 175% damage to a frozen target. That's a reforge. That is something that could be applied to weapons in the TerraCells mod. For instance, you might have a sword that deals bonus damage to a target that's been hit with a certain debuff. You might have... I mean, really, that's the bulk of it. Timed events are a staple of roguelikes, yeah. This is the equivalent of accessories here. It's an amulet. This gives us an extra jump in midair, and also levels up our tactics. Will the secret areas be implemented from the start? Likely to some degree, Dan. We could always add additional rooms with branches to secret areas if we need to add them in later. We could just add pools that lead to them into the world generation pool. And this is ice armor, which we can activate for essentially the ability to nullify a hit for a few seconds. Which I guess I'll get. I like ice armor. Can you do textures or reworks? At the moment, the main things that I would be considering... Would I limit the amount of accessories a players can have at a given time? Yes. The current system, which is pretty heavily inspired by Dead Cells, I think it's just a good number, is you can have 2 of an item at a given time. You can have 2 weapons, you can have 2 accessories, you could have 2 like support weapons like sentries or summons or grenades, or the skills, basically. You know, you might be able to carry a Molotov cocktail, which would be on a cooldown, or you would have a limited amount of. And a pirate staff that summons a pirate. These are where the cells come into play, which are kind of a currency for doing macro upgrades over a scale between games. I'm not sure about implementing a system like this. As of right now, I haven't thought too much about it, but this is a good opportunity to think about it. This could be a way to unlock permanent upgrades. It could be a way to unlock new items. In Dead Cells, you find schematics, and then you give this guy cells to get those schematics and unlock those items for future runs. Mobility items such as wings would not be in the mod. I don't think the mobility given by wings would fit in something like this. And no, they would not have their own separate slot. They would... I just... With things like, you know, climbing gear or not even fledgling, I think it's a lot harder to build functional levels and rooms where wings need to be taken into the equation. Because wings are inherently incredibly powerful and simply allow players to stay up high or get on top of terrain that they're not supposed to be getting on top of. Wings trivialize exploration. Yeah, that too. Will I keep the multiplayer in mind? It'll be in the back of the mind, but I wouldn't say it's something that I'm going to prioritize heavily. Enemies like Moonlord or wings are practically necessary would be off limits. Enemies would be adjusted so that you would not need to have wings to dodge them. Is Dead Cells endless? No, it has an ending. So many items in Terraria drop by enemies, so it can be a nice concept, like some items we found in special rooms, some other drop by enemies and stuff, and locked for future runs. Yeah, I mean, realistically, there would be some macro currency that you would get, and you would spend somewhere in order to unlock things, I think. And if item synergy like the Breaker Blade gets the first hit in the keybind to finish an enemy off, there will be synergies. I don't know about that synergy specifically. Includes sandbox mechanics of Terraria. I would like to implement some level of sandbox mechanics, but I think sandbox mechanics are inherently problematic in a roguelike design like this. With the layout of the world and the way that levels are going to be structured together, the concepts of building and destroying are likely not going to be presented very heavily. A potential macro upgrade could be a pickaxe, which allows you to break certain blocks in the world. It would need to be modified to allow that to be possible, but there may be certain paths you need to obtain a pickaxe in order to get down. There might be items that allow you to temporarily place items, like the ice rod, or place blocks. But in general, I think the freedom that's afforded with a sandbox style would make it extremely difficult to have a balanced experience. You know, special rooms where placing and breaking are enabled for a puzzle of some sort? Potentially. Your roguelike purist tendencies to have their hair stand up when you hear permanent upgrades, then the more sensible sensibilities you have to tell them to shut up. I mean, permanent upgrades are just a good way of giving replayability to the game. What are you talking about? You thought there was already a Terraria roguelike mod? I am talking about my plans to implement a different vision of a Terraria roguelike mod, using that one as a proof of concept. That one was very heavily inspired by Risk of Rain. The developer Aqua SG also has things that came up in their personal life, and it's unlikely they're going to continue developing it. So I would like to implement my vision for a roguelike mod, which is more inspired by Dead Cells rather than Risk of Rain. The trickiest thing you can foresee is trying to implement enemy AI similar to Dead Cells. Any idea of how to tackle it? I mean, the basic concept, I think enemies would need to be given a... When you say proof of concept, how much of the code base / structure you intend to keep? Not much from my understanding. I was talking about the people who are going to be the coding aspect of it. And it seemed that starting fresh, but using it as a reference for how to achieve things is likely how we're going to go, as opposed to using it as a code base and modifying it. I mean, we're going to be making our own levels. Yeah, that's what I was having as the idea for that, Santrovoid. Is the Gravedigger Shovel is already restricted in what blocks it can break, so it's feasible to create an item that would only be able to destroy certain blocks. Enemies are going to be reworked, but entirely new ones are going to be added. As of right now, no. Terraria has a ton of enemies to begin with, and I don't think it's necessary to add new enemies when we can simply rework what's already existing in Terraria. But once we have a stable base and a proof of concept to work off of, we may consider adding more things on top of that. This is the Goblin Tinkerer, basically. Here, we can reforge our modifiers. Right now, we have our Seismic Strike, which cannot be interrupted by an enemy's attack and shoots an arrow in front of us. If we reforge it, we get different things. Now it has plus 20% damage, and it still can't be interrupted by an enemy's attack. There would be a hub world between levels, similar to this one, you'd have a brief break, and there would be several NPCs to interact with. Yes, there would be a rework of modifiers. You would have the Goblin Tinkerer, who could reforge things. You can also upgrade to a higher quality here, which just increases the damage. We go from up to 346 DPS. It's a plus sword now. And this guy has mutations, and I'm not sure if we're going to implement a system like this. I mean, these are essentially permanent upgrades for the duration of the run that you can reset here and re-choose, that just give you miscellaneous powerful effects, and there's all sorts of them. You unlock them all over the place. In the framework of Terraria, it would be something like, you know, killing an enemy with a ranged weapon decreases your use time, or your ranged weapon attacks stick in enemies and inflict a debuff, or your yo-yo attacks spawn a counterweight when you hit things. Accessory slots, yeah, I think having accessories be a rough analog to this would work well. We collect one run only permanent upgrades like life crystals, yes. Mutations are a big part of setting up combos and synergies, yeah, and I think in Terraria, okay, you have to pick these. Accessories would be the analog to that, rather than trying to force the mutation system. What's the general skill level of builders I'm looking for? I would like it to look nice. Gaze. So, I would say fairly experienced, or able to look at what other people are doing and make something of a similar aesthetic style. Because, I mean, worst case, you can just try building something and it's just rejected if it doesn't quite match up with the quality that we want. We get to recharge our healing potion here, which we don't need to do because we already have our healing potion at full charge right now. And now we're going on to a new level. And this level, unlike the last one, which was underground, is exposed to the air. And in the TerraCells mod, there would be a mixture of things exposed to the air with open skies, and things... This is an example of a secret zone that we can get to because we had a wall climbing. And things underground. As long as you at least build close to the skill level of me. Is crafting things going to be a thing in the mod? I would like to implement some kind of crafting system. But as to what that's going to look like, I'm not quite sure yet. I think, realistically, it would be combining certain items if you can... Basically, if you can happen to find... Think of it kind of like the key fragments in Binding of Isaac, I suppose. Where if you manage to find two items that match together, you can craft them into an item that has a specific purpose or is more powerful. More custom pythons. For instance, I mean, an easy one is you might find a Wand of Sparking, and you might find some ice-related weapon, and you could combine them together to make a Wand of Frosting, right? I don't think the crafting will be particularly large in scope. Or like a horseshoe in a balloon. Yeah, things like that. But I would not say that it's going to be the forefront of the game. We will see, Vampete. It's entirely possible, but I'm not going to commit to trying to do that yet. And the bosses will likely be more custom just because vanilla bosses are rather underwhelming. And in a system like this, having interesting bosses to engage with would be important. Similar to roguelike. However, unlike to roguelike, this thing is going to be fast-paced. To roguelike was slow as hell. We were fighting Skeletron for like 5 minutes, unless you happen to get one of the overpowered items that just one-shots everything. You had to shoot bosses like 200 or 300 times to kill them. I imagine the average duration of a boss fight in this would be less than 60 seconds. And they would be higher lethality. You could reasonably get through areas within a couple of minutes. And runs would probably take somewhere in the ballpark of 15 to 20 minutes, 30 on the long end. Fusing or changing their secondary properties? Yeah. Yeah. Or potentially things like a Knight's Edge or Terror Blade or Zenith type weapon. Probably not Zenith. I think the mechanics of the Zenith are inherently problematic. But being able to collect particular melee weapons and combine them together to a Terror Blade or a Knight's Edge. Bossing with mainly glass cannons. Yeah, I think in a roguelike or roguelite, having bosses that dish out a lot of damage and can take and won't just be sitting there for ages shooting the boss is good. Kind of like a Nuclear Throne style. Although probably a bit more survivable than Nuclear Throne. Where you see a boss, the boss is going to be trying very hard to kill you, and they very reasonably can kill you, but you're not just, like, wailing on them for ages. Which was one of my main issues with roguelike, is things just had so much HP. Terraria isn't about combos with different weapons, unlike Dead Cells. What we do about that? Well, make them about combos with different weapons. We have the ability to add conditional effects to weapons based on the status of enemies. So, a certain weapon could apply a debuff, let's say a bleeding debuff, and another weapon could critically hit when hitting an enemy with a bleeding debuff. Let's say short swords. You could have tiers of short swords, copper, iron, silver, and platinum. And as you get later in the game, you get better short swords to drop, the higher tier ones. And short swords have the innate effect of critically hitting bleeding enemies. So, if you had a way to apply a bleeding effect, you could get extremely high DPS with short swords. I mean, it's just a conceptual thing, Chris. And, I mean, as long as the mod is implemented in a way where melee is feasible, short swords aren't inherently bad. Short swords could be the high DPS, get in their face close option, because they hit very quickly, and if they're guaranteed to critically hit on every hit if against a bleeding enemy, that could be a lot of DPS. You could have oiled debuffs. Terraria already has the oiled debuff, but you could work the oiled debuff to work a lot better against flaming things and have better synergies with fire. You could have some kind of slow or freezing debuff and things that synergize with that. But yeah, this is open to the sky, and this might be a room, right? It might end at this little cliff here. In TerraCells. This is our room number 1. And then we generate another room after that, and the room is filled with traps. It's got these spikes and these spike balls, both of which already exist in Terraria. We can utilize traps as part of world generation in quite a few different ways. And let's say this room applies until that door right there. That's where the new room starts. We get to here, and we've got this bat. And then we kind of chain together rooms like that. Will there be any implementation of the curse debuff? Quite possibly. What is this? I mean, this is Dead Cells, which is the thing that I'm basing the TerraCells mod off of. I feel like we've kind of gone over what Dead Cells is now. I would like to get into planning the world layout for the mod, which I'm going to be doing by literally just making a document here in GIMP and just literally spatially considering what it's going to look like. So let's make a document, and the player is going to start in a forest biome. I'd like to have the progression of the mod roughly analog Terraria's base progression in terms of biomes and where you end up, at least for the span of pre-hard mode. And you start in the forest. So every single run, this is GIMP. It's basically a poor man's Photoshop. every run is going to start in the forest. And from the forest, you will have the option of going in a couple different directions. Ultimately, I would like to have... I'm just going to start putting down biomes and think of how to connect them later. I would like to have a frozen city type biome, which would be a bunch of houses and structures in a surface snow biome, which, following Terraria's progression, could lead into the dungeon, which could be kept further in the frozen city, which could then lead down, eventually linking up to the underworld, where the end of pre-hard mode is. However, we could also... the underworld's the ultimate destination. The frozen city could also link up to the underground snow biome. I'll bring that to 60. Which could then also link up to the underworld. Wouldn't it be easier to wait for the next Terraria update when it adds this as the Dead Cells collab? I'm impatient. Besides, there's no way of knowing when that's going to come. It could be like... It could not come until next year, right? I want to work on this now. Besides, it might inspire the developers to add other things for the update as part of the crossover. I'm gonna have to scale this down a little bit, just to be able to fit all the different areas. It could be a Silksong situation. I mean, yeah, it's 1.4.5 has been in the works for quite a while, and we still don't have a release date. There's no reason to assume it's coming anytime soon. So eventually you end up in the frozen city. There was the important question of how many biomes do we want to have before coming to the final biome, where the final boss is. We start in the forest. I'm thinking 4 areas, with the underworld being the 5th. You start in the forest, you go to one area, you go to another area, you go to another area, and then that finally takes you to the underworld. I think that would be short enough as to not become tedious. It would allow you to go through an array of different levels. Possibly the underworld being the 4th. Marble and granite biomes, potentially. No, Cyphery. I think of layers like depth. I'm thinking of layers as a rough way of demonstrating the player's progression through the world. So, like, in a general sense, you start in the forest, you have the option of going east or west or south. What's going to end up happening to the evil biomes? Any alternative secret areas? There will be. Underworld is last? Yes. For now, the mod is going to be following the rough progression of pre-hard mode. And I think the way that I would implement alternative progression is that after completing the Wall of Flesh, you open up hard mode, which is when you have all sorts of new areas and new bosses and things like that. But the initial Terraria experience is going through to kill the Wall of Flesh, and that's what I want the mod to echo. And as far as the ocean biome, I think Noida. I don't know what Noida's biome distinction and room randomization is, Santroid. I hated Noida, so starting there is not a good suggestion. You're doing the deepest part last, so you think you do a fun little Dante's Inferno thing? The Aether could be some kind of safe hub / store area. I think the implementation of the ocean would be... I mean, taking a boat somewhere else is kind of cool. It could be like... I mean, Dead Cells has a boat level, and you take a boat to a lighthouse, but I feel like you would essentially be leaving the Terraria world and going to another alternative ending, is how that would work out. maybe you just sailing off and you fight Duke Fishron on the boat as you're going. But it's like the biome's major areas are always in place, but everything between them is completely randomized. I don't want to do a system like that. There are levels here. Like you're going to be going between levels, and I mean that sounds like I already have an idea of the world layout. I don't think we need to. I need to reconsider it to be more like Noida. Uh, I think another consideration is when to fight bosses and which bosses to fight. Um, I think two boss fights before the final boss fight would be ideal. Potentially up to three, depending on the path the player takes. But I don't really want the to roguelike system where every level just ends in a boss fight. Um, I think you should be able to get through areas without fighting bosses, similar to Dead Cells. Because I think just fighting a boss at the end of every level gets a little bit stale. Um, and I think that also fits better with the concept of a lot of things in the mod. I do like the idea of the evil biomes. I like the idea of elite boss mobs uh, having enemies that are more dangerous and have additional effects, but give you better rewards for killing them. That's not going to be a thing, Vaneth. Will I make my own sprites? I have some people who are good at spriting that are working on the project. I think the most likely things they would do is implement custom furniture, like most bosses are going to be optional. I mean, you're going to have to fight bosses. Which boss you fight will be optional, but you will have to fight bosses in order to complete the game. This is the Rainworld font, yeah. Yeah, it's similar to that, Panda, yeah. I'm not going to be going to the same scale of Dead Cells, at least not right now, in terms of the quantity of levels. So it might be more like every 2 to 3 levels instead of every 3 to 4, but that basic concept, yeah. So we've got a frozen city that links to the underground, snow, and the dungeon. We've got a jungle biome, which could lead to a beehive sub-biome. Where you would fight Queen Bee. And it would be its own thing. The jungle could also connect to the jungle temple. Which might be a secret area that can't be accessed until after killing the Wall of Flesh and unlocking hard mode. Would the fights be like vanilla in the order they were done? Not necessarily. I'm trying to roughly parallel progression, but it's not like you're going to go down the path. Beehive is an optional area as a risk reward. Yeah, I think Jungle Temple as a secret area, that's not immediately accessible and requires some special upgrade to reach would be a good idea. Yeah, I'd like to have rune equivalents, Panda. Obviously, you've got the corruption and the crimson. And I like the idea of immediately after the forest, you take your choice of corruption or crimson. Those are your two options. And perhaps you could go underground as like an extra sub area, but then ultimately you need to choose between corruption and crimson. And then after that, you get your choice of going to the frozen city or the jungle. Um, I feel like this layout right now, I'm kind of liking the uh, overall. You start in the forest, you end up going to the Crimson or the Corruption. Uh, Sub areas as an alternate floors in the Binding of Isaac? No, more like an extra level you could go to that's optional but would give you better rewards. Can I put arrows? Uh, so you could go Forest, Corruption, Jungle, Beehive, Underworld. You could go Forest, Corruption, Frozen City, Underground, Snow, Underworld. You could go Forest, Crimson, Frozen City, Dungeon, Underworld. Um, yeah, I would like to make an Underground section, Linpot. Uh, I'm just going with the broad strokes here, and I think for the core game areas, this is doing pretty well. Prison Depths and Dead Cells, yeah. Uh, the desert could also be its own branch, uh, where the desert leads you to the underground desert. So let's format this a bit. We start up here in the forest in the corner. And then we have the choice. I'm going to say we have 3. Will Sky Islands be a thing? Uh, it would need to be like a whole floating world spicy vending machine. Sky Islands individually isn't really a level. Sky Islands is a secret area? Yeah, I could see that. You know, the desert is interesting to enough to include? Well, it wouldn't just be desert. It would be something more akin to the frozen city, where there would be... You're not going to a desert, you're delving into a pyramid. And, you know, that pyramid is full of traps and has a bunch of gold in it, kind of like the bank in Dead Cells. And then that ultimately leads to, like, a desert depths area that has all the underground desert stuff. Like, just because it's the desert doesn't mean it's literally just a blank desert. So from the forest, I'm going to say, would the desert have the desert elemental? Conceivably. After reaching the depths, you get transported from space to the forest / sky islands. I'm not sure what you are asking. I feel like I would like to have granite and marble biomes. I like the idea of fleshing out. And we could also just have the generic caverns inspired area. We could have a sub area of caverns. Is nothing necessary to progression? I would say the only necessary points you are guaranteed to go in would be the forest and the underworld. What happened after the underworld? That is something that I want to decide after we have the foundation for the thing. I think the most realistic implementation of that would be you go back and now you're in hard mode and the world is different. And permanently from then on out, you're in hard mode. You don't just loop back to the beginning and keep doing the same run. You've unlocked hard mode and now everything will be in hard mode. Marble biome could have something to do with statues. That's cool. Yeah, I like Slumbering Sanctuary. So I'm going to say you start in the forest. You can go to the Corruption. You can go to the Crimson. or you can just go underground. Actually, I like the idea of corruption and crimson being the points where you likely engage with the first boss. Um, where your likely first boss is going to be the Eater of Worlds or Brain of Cthulhu. Um, so maybe we structure this a little bit differently. We start in the forest, and you immediately have the option of going to the Frozen City, or underground. What about Eye? The Eye is kind of just a bore. Like, I can't implement every single boss from Terraria, and oh, maps theme is randomly generated. It's going to be generated from a pool of uh, pre-made rooms. So Forest can connect to Underground, Frozen City. I'll just say one of those two. And then from there, these loop back, and after that, you choose. Well, now maybe put the Frozen City later. I want to have. I think some hard mode enemies are cooler than fighting the Eye. It's the sequencing here that I'm thinking about. Frozen City and underground areas are grind areas to grind out the gear. No. So the main levels, right? Forest, Corruption Crimson, Jungle, Frozen City. Those are the first three. I would say those are the major levels, and everything else would be smaller levels. Or side levels. And honestly, I think just from the forest, you choose either Corruption or Crimson. I think I can implement the underground later. Some sort of underwater area, like the Sunken Sea from Calamity. Maybe, but that seems challenging to implement compared to these. I'll keep it in mind. Biomimic mini boss, but with stats toned down for pre-hard mode. There'll be side characters to interact with other than vendors, possibly. Mixing corruption slash crimson with other biomes like biome spread. Like the desert should be equal to the frozen city. I mean, the fork could just be after the corruption or crimson, you have the option of going to the jungle, desert pyramid, or frozen city. And those three are treated equivalently. And then each one of those has another area after it that ultimately you go down in the jungle past the beehive to get to the underworld. You go down in the pyramid in the desert to the underground desert to eventually get to the underworld. And you go to the frozen city and you either go to the underground snow biome and go downward, or you go to the dungeon, which also leads to the underworld. I guess if you had a boss, but most were optional besides the ones every 2 to 3 rooms. Ice Golem and Sand Elemental bosses. Yeah, so bread and butter. Forest at nighttime. You start in a campfire type area. I'll need to figure out where I want to implement the marble biome, granite biome, and underground, but I will do that later. Um, 'Cause, 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 The underground snow be present until the underworld. Kind of doesn't make sense that it isn't melting. I mean, lore-wise, you could just say something like you get to the end of the underground snow biome and you take a lift to the rest of the underworld. Right? It doesn't need to make that much sense. So corruption and crimson are interchangeable. Regardless of which one you take, you'll end up with the choice between frozen city, jungle, and dungeon. Oh, sorry, and desert. I'll say desert pyramid just to make that clear. Shouldn't the respective caverns, marble, and granite all be packed into an underground area with some kind of distinction in the area? What? Do you mean just have them, instead of being their own distinct levels, have them just be part of one level? And have it be the marble part of this level and the granite part of the underground level? Yeah, the underworld is the current conceptual end of the game. Um, I mean, maybe we were considering macro upgrades, right? The idea of on a large scale between runs, you could get some kind of gear to upgrade you. What if the underground? Because right now we're not really interacting with the world on a this is pre-hard mode silver. Uh, on a crafting and mining level. Um, what if at some point you are able to unlock a pickaxe which is able to break certain blocks, and by using that pickaxe, instead of going across the surface to the corruption and the crimson, you were able to dig to the underground, and the underground could lead to the marble biome, the granite biome, eventually the cavern layer, or have some alternative path that links back up to these and skip the corruption and the crimson. um Breakable walls, certain walls being breakable, yeah. That would be difficult with building. We'll just make sure it doesn't drop blocks. So the underground is the area for replayability. Yeah, it's an alternative path. There's a lot of that in Dead Cells where as you play, you unlock entirely new areas and new items to allow you to unlock those areas. Um, and it could be that because I don't want the player to skip the corruption and the crimson. I think that's a pretty important part. But after they've beaten the game, or after they've gotten past the corruption and crimson and unlocked the pickaxe, taking an alternative route, digging down and then digging around to the other biomes underground, um, I think would let that work. Mushroom biome could be an underground path. Yeah, you could go underground, and then you have your choice of a few different biomes. You have a hidden marble biome off to the side, a granite biome, you have a mushroom biome, and they each lead to different places. The mushroom biome might lead off to the jungle. Um, the marble and granite biomes might lead deeper underground. Terraria roguelike remake. I mean, it, this isn't like Terraria roguelike mod 2.0. It's, well, yes, that is the proof of concept, and while we are taking some inspiration from some of the things there, um, this isn't. It's a very different design direction than that mod. Uh, would Ocean be a biome maybe only unlocked after killing Duke, as he would give Gills potions? As of right now, I'm not going to consider the ocean, because I think with the objective of the game, going to the ocean doesn't make much sense, because your objective is to go to the underworld. And going to the ocean doesn't really further that goal. Um, I'll consider it once we have this hammered out. Uh, So jungle, beehive. Maybe I have the jungle depths. Um, where the jungle is kind of the surface jungle area. Um, and then you go down. Perhaps there's a path that leads down to the beehive, um, which then eventually links back up to the jungle depths. Uh, you have the jungle temple, which would be a side area in the jungle depths. And then the jungle depths eventually leads back to the underworld where the game ends. Shimmer could be a safe zone. I like Promenade of the Condemned giving Vine Rune. Yeah, yeah. Uh, Ocean Walk is an alt ending like Lighthouse would be best to avoid feature creep. Yeah. Um, I mean, the Shimmer mini biome is cool and all, but I don't really know what benefit there would be to going to the Shimmer mini biome. Um, like in a world layout level, like the Shimmer doesn't really have unique enemies. It's very small. It's very creatively oriented. We would have to just completely overhaul it and just use the Shimmer's aesthetic for a separate area, which is fine. Um, like we could use the Shimmer pylon or Aether pylon or whatever, um, and like have it as a secret area, but it's not going to be part of main progression. Um, so the Frozen City can link to the underground snow or the dungeon. Um, we also need to decide where to place bosses. So if you go forest, I think I said I wanted the underworld as the 5th level. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Uh, Maybe the Desert Pyramid is a particularly long or dangerous level with a lot of traps. What if you could just skip into the jump into the shimmer to skip a few levels, or you could just go past? I mean, why? That's the thing for me. Like, I don't think the shimmer's really adding very much. Um, Shimmer's the bottom layer before the transition to the underworld's on a full biome. I'll think about it, but as of right now, I don't really feel very good about implementing the shimmer. I don't think it works well, for lack of a better way to describe it. They can use it as a one-way entrance, but so can just one way. Like we don't. I don't think we need to force the shimmer to be in here. I don't think the shimmer is necessary. Shimmer to say is Sky Island or Ocean. Yeah, it's like a small secret side area. That's something, but I don't think it's really worth considering too much. Um, Shimmer could be a rare event room that allows you to change some small things about your build. It's possible, but I'm more interested in hammering out this right now. I don't think the shimmer is worth considering. Like, if it's going to be implemented, it's going to be some small side thing. It really is not important. Uh, Level 1, level 2. Boss here. After the boss, you have your choice of jungle, frozen city, or desert pyramid. Um, Beehive would have a boss. Uh, I would like a boss in the jungle depths as well. I know that's two back-to-back bosses if you take the Beehive path. Um, so maybe the Beehive has an alternative path that avoids it, but you could also choose to go back to the jungle depths, which had a boss. Um, shouldn't there be a boss for almost all zones? No, I think that would be tedious. Uh, the dungeon. Dead Cells is a boss every few levels. I know. Um, Underworld. Yeah, I mean, the Underworld's gonna have a boss, obviously. Uh, I want to make sure the player fights 2 to 3 bosses before getting to the Underworld. Um, that's the goal. Uh, could I add arrows? Yeah. Hold on. It's what we're working with right now. Is the Terraria theme essential for the roguelite to work? I mean, it's in Terraria. I mean, if you can pick the same route every run, won't people find some boring meta to do every run? If people play the mod enough to create a meta game for the specific route to go down, I would consider that a win. I mean, I so the corruption crimson boss is obvious. Uh, Eater or Brain or some other corruption crimson themed thing. Beehive, obviously Queen Bee. Jungle Depths. I think I like the idea of if you go Forest, Corruption, Jungle, Jungle Depths, Underworld, you skip a boss compared to the other routes. Or I think there should be some amount of discrepancy between some routes have like one fewer boss than others, but that's compensated for in some other way. Such as the areas being longer, being more dangerous, having a lot of traps, having to go through another level or something like that. I mean, the route's not done yet, Santroid. I'm still planning it. You want to talk it out? There's fucking nothing in the Desert Pyramid. Yeah, I mean, if people want to play it enough to speedrun it and optimize it, that's great. I mean, the release build that we're going to put out is not going to be the final version. We'll update it. If there's a problem, we can adjust it. But if people play it enough to be thinking about a meta and optimizing it, that's great. Uh, Desert Pyramid is endgame, shortest route in-game. I I kind of envision the Desert Pyramid as sort of being like the bank in Dead Cells. Um, Maybe we go with two mandatory bosses, and you can optionally fight a third boss. Um, no, no, no. I mean, I want people to die to bosses, Catalyst. This is a roguelite. You should be getting your ass kicked. You should be dying. You should not be walking into it knowing you're going to win. Um, you should be forced to fight bosses, and those bosses should be significant challenge, and those bosses should kill you. Sometimes. If you got a good build, you'll survive them. If you're good at the game, you'll be able to kill them. But it shouldn't just be, oh yeah, I can just go kill the boss, right? It's no difficulty whatsoever. Like the boss should represent a challenge. You shouldn't be able to walk up and just waltz through everything. I think we're kind of following a thing here where two levels and then a boss, right? I'm not sure what the underground snow boss is going to be. Um, I think maybe we add another level in here. Like if we're going with a boss every two levels, um, you go from here and then you immediately go down to the underworld. Uh, we could do a like lava layer boss. Um, oh, sorry, not a boss, just like a lava layer where you get deep in the world and there's something deep underground. Maybe it's some kind of like ruins or mine shaft. Maybe it's some kind of uh the consensus for mushroom biome. It's not something I have in the world layout yet. Uh, is Underworld meant to be the end? It is the current endpoint for design planning, but it is not ultimately the end. Um, I think I'm going to tentatively put down another layer, but I want it to be something distinct. I want there to be something above the underworld that is a distinct area. It's not just underground lava area. It's like a ruined forge or no, the ocean would not be above the underworld. That doesn't make sense. Uh, a factory or some kind of ruined city deep underground. Uh, oh, I did have an idea for a factory, which I really liked, which was using actuators to toggle platforms on and off every like 10 seconds. So there would be conveyor belts that would be switching directions. There would be platforms that would be toggling on and off every once in a while. And that could lead down to the underworld. Like a parkour area, yeah. That could be like one of the two areas that leads down to the underworld. Um, and I'll say the factory is going to be. I'll say Frozen City can link up to the factory. Um, but I want a second area uh, for the other side of the world. I think Frozen City leads to factory. Desert Pyramid and Jungle um, should have a separate thing because they're on the other side of the world. Or maybe you could just go to either one. That's not too important, but I like the idea of having some kind of exclusivity where the path you took determines some level of what you have access to later. Let me go ahead and move these up here. What about a mine shaft that leads towards the underworld that gives the factory its materials? Maybe a more combat-focused option as well as the factory? Respotted sand tank? Yeah. He's very mechanical. A respotted king slime to be a mushroom? I don't... I'll worry about the bosses later. Right now, I just want to get the world layout. Rails are underground. An overgrown factory. A ruined factory. Maybe just some kind of ruins that sank into the jungle. Right? Like, maybe the jungle and the jungle depths will have remnants of buildings of some kind throughout them. Some kind of indication that there was something there a long time ago that collapsed and it sank into the earth. It's muddy, it's soft soil. Yeah, that would be similar to the jungle temple, yeah. A lost civilization sort of thing, yeah. Where it's been completely overgrown and you just have the ruins of it way deep underground at the bottom of the jungle. And I actually have these mixed up here. I think the Desert Pyramid should be in the middle as like the intermediate between them. Lost Lizard Society. The deeper you go, the more the ruins become apparent. Yeah, there'd be very occasional things on the top of the jungle. Jungle depths, you'd see them dotted here and about, and then when you get to the final bottom area, it would be fully evident that you were like within the ruins. So all of that is a tentative choice there. At the very least, some kind of level there. And you have the option between the ruins and the factory before you get to the underworld. Neither one has a boss. The factory is mechanical. It's got conveyor belts, actuators, things turning on and off, wiring. And the ruins are basically just a destroyed, overgrown city. You like the idea of being a plague or natural disaster or something? Please don't do Mayan/Aztec thing that is cultural appropriation. Mayan/Aztecs don't have a monopoly on the concept of a ruined civilization. What if the ruins were the Dryad civilization? Potentially. We'll just put ruins down here. Uh, and the jungle temple could connect to the ruins as an optional side area. Jungle boss goes down. I'm not Boneyard. Are there gonna be locked chests for loot down the path or just for the dungeon? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm gonna swap around the desert pyramid and the frozen city here. Um, I think the frozen city and the jungle should be on opposite sides of the world. Uh, and I think the desert pyramid should have the option to go to either one. I think the frozen city should lead to the factory, and the jungle depth should lead to the ruins. And the desert pyramid can go to the ruins or the factory. Just kind of spatially laying them out. Jungle next to the desert? I mean, that's how it works in Terraria. The jungle is next to the desert. That's Terraria. Uh, There's something about meta progression like unlocks. Yeah, I conceptualized side areas. Like I think the jungle temple will be a secret area that requires some kind of meta progression. I'm thinking of introducing the underground as kind of like a meta progression area. But right now I kind of just want to lay out the framework for the base here. Um, Add hollow? No, hollow's a hard mode thing. This is following pre-hard mode. Spider cave with a big spider boss. That's interesting. Um, so the next question, what is underneath the desert pyramid? Um, like underground desert? Just regular underground? Giant enemy spider. Uh, we need we need one level or potentially two levels as the sub desert pyramid option, right? The frozen city has the option of dungeon or underground snow, and they both link back up to the factory. Underground desert and pyramid depths. I would use the word depths. I don't want to use the word depths again. Regular underground. It could just link back up to the regular cavern layer. Yeah. Maybe the desert pyramid links to the regular cavern layer or the underground desert, which maybe like antlion nest. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. And the caverns can connect to either the ruins or the factory. Um, do granite and or marble for sub-biomes like the spider cave. I think I would have those as secret areas. Um, I think those smaller biomes. I think factory ruin should be jungle exclusive. Why? I like the idea of flexibility with options. Um, we're gonna talk about item scaling. I don't know if I have the time to today because I'm gonna have to go. Actually, I have to go unlock my front door for someone to come in. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, we've got 20 minutes to uh iron out this flowchart. Middle path should be allowed to go for either endgame since it's inherently a non-committal option. That's what I was thinking, yeah. Um, and like it's cool having the ruins be specific to the jungle depths, but I don't want it to just be a completely separate line that doesn't connect with anything else. I think having some amount of linking back up is good. So you're not fully committing to. You want to have options, right? Um, so I thought about having the desert pyramid, just having the desert above the desert pyramid. But the problem with that is I don't really know how interesting it's going to be to have just a second just city, right? We've got the frozen city, and I feel like the only interesting way to do the desert would just be to have it be like another city. And I, like if it's just a desert, I mean it's just a fucking desert, right? I mean, how many different things can you do with a desert? A flooded desert? Eh. Lead to an underground oasis, sunken sea type thing to allow for some water mechanics. Pirate land. Why would the pirates be in the desert? That doesn't make sense. An oasis? Yeah, but like an oasis has an entire level. Because that's the thing. This is a major level. This isn't like a side area. This is. I mean, I guess the desert could be a smaller level and lead into the larger desert pyramid afterwards. Um, the antlion nest. I don't mind the antlion nest. I think that was a good idea. Um, because like each one of these biomes has is an arid mountain sort of thing. Eh. Maybe the player just goes to a desert as a small level, um, which then leads back up to the major desert. Well, no, that doesn't. Yeah, the pyramid is kind of a tomb. I mean, that's what a pyramid is. Non-standard deserts are a fun concept. It's not about the concept. It's about implementing it in a way that would make for a fun level. I've considered it, Dashiell. Um, as of right now, though, I really just want to get the broad strokes here. Secret areas can come later. Um, so I do like the antlion nest idea. Uh, and maybe the boss, um, is in the antlion nest. Yeah, you get through the pyramid, you get down to the antlion nest. Uh, and it's directly underneath the antlion nest. And maybe the antlion nest is like a massive information infestation that caused serious issues with with the pyramid, and you kind of get cues of it as you're going about, and then you kind of get to the meat of it and go wipe out the infestation. Uh, a mod called Vitality as a giant antlion boss that inspiration can be taken from. Uh, yeah, I like Antlion Nest. An Antlion Nest could be a smaller level, and then you link back up to the caverns, which could take you to either one of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The thing is, that is one level longer than the non-optional things. So one of these, maybe the antlion nest is a small area. Basically, uh, could fill the desert with traps. I mean, the pyramid's gonna be filled with traps. Uh, Spider den that goes into the dungeon. There's definitely potential there. Then desert pyramid or antlion nest, and then cavern. The thing is, I still don't know what I would do with the desert level. Like I don't see a way of doing a desert that would be very interesting personally. Maybe I'll have to see what the builders can cook up as far as like desert aesthetics, but I don't see a desert being an interesting level. Like a spider thing under the frozen city to have an infestation of bugs on each route. A spider den in the dungeon. There could be a side area with a spider den on one of those, but we can always add that in later. Um, I think that's non-committal. I mean, I like this. The only thing is that um, right now this path is one level longer than the other ones, um, which means these paths either need to be shorter than the other options, or uh, incorporate desert and desert pyramid into a single level. You start in one, but then have to leave through the other. Could steal an amber gemstone, then get chased and have to fight a boss. Underground snow should be something like frozen catacombs. Well, I mean that's the dungeon, really. Like, if the frozen city is a frozen city, right? Then the dungeon with all of its skeleton themes would basically be where the frozen city shoved its people to go die. Um, Whereas the underground snow would be like mines or something for the frozen civilization. Gemstones to open doors is a really interesting idea. The gem locks. Yeah, that's not bad. The big gemstones. Yeah, I know what you mean. Antlion nests make more spidery and add cobweb ropes that stretch diagonally and horizontally that serve as platforms for the fight. I don't like rope platforms. Plan for the underground marble granite areas. Not right now. I'd really like to get this final idea done because I gotta go pick up food soon. I mean, I like this. We can add, could do a frozen ocean theme for underground snow. That's not bad. I like that. Yeah, buried pirate ship. Or some kind of like cove underground. Maybe the city wasn't always frozen. Maybe it was built in fair weather and then the whole place froze over and a cove um was on a lake that turned to ice. Um Imagine desert as burning themed with blocks that inflict an amped up fire effect, smoke to obscure vision, and a constant burning effect, meaning you need to do the level fast or risk dying. Oh god, that sounds like that one Dead Cells level where you like constantly have to be going through and like hit the next light or whatever. I hated that level. Yeah, starting up, going down. You start in the forest, you have your pick of either Crimson or Corruption, you fight a boss there. Then you have your choice of either going to the jungle, the desert pyramid, or the frozen city. The jungle can lead to the beehive or the jungle depths, the beehive as an optional side boss. Um, Eventually, it leads down to the ruins of a civilization that sank into the jungle, and then ultimately the underworld, where the Wall of Flesh is, where it's the final boss for this stage of the mod. Um, you can go to the Desert Pyramid, which is full of traps, but also loot. Think kind of like the bank in Dead Cells. It leads down to an antlion nest, where there would be an antlion-themed boss. And that can just lead back to the cavern layer, where you have your choice of going to the ruins or the factory. Forgotten Sepulchre, yeah. Or the Frozen City, which connects to the dungeon. How does underground snow or dungeon connect to a factory? Because there, I mean, you want a lore explanation? You could say that the civilization that controlled the frozen city put its imprisoned people to work in the factory. Or the underground snow biome, I mean, it's this factory of the frozen city. It just connects between the two of them logically. Is desert still an extra level? No, I think if it would be anything, it would be you start in the desert, then make your way into the pyramid after a couple of rooms. Yeah, desert does still have an extra level, but I think I rectify that by just... Why not have cavern lead to a volcano sort of area rather than split between ruins and factories? That way we have three distinct paths. Could a factory change depending on what biome you came from? I don't mind that idea, but it's a lot to do. I mean, that's not... I mean, what if caverns just doesn't connect to ruins and factory? It's just its own third area. And maybe it's not the cavern specifically, like you were saying. Maybe it's something else. But what if instead of caverns leading to ruins and factory, it's just the caverns? Uh, Taking desert also lets you pick the penultimate area, which is an advantage. Yeah, I don't want to have that happen. Um, and maybe there will be some side option that would allow you to alter your path. Like maybe from the antlion nest, jungle depths, or dungeon, you could go to a mushroom biome or a granite biome, and that would allow you to, like, you could go to the granite biome from the dungeon, which could let you get to the caverns or the factory as like a small side area. Or in the jungle depths, you could go to a mushroom biome or a spider nest or something like that, which could allow you to swap to the regular caverns or the ruins. Um, Jungle Path potentially has 8 different zones. It does. The Jungle Temple is a secret side area. Um, but that is true. Um, I just haven't come up with the secret side areas for the other ones yet. Um, but I think I will implement similar secret side areas, maybe a spider nest. Um, because these are small areas, right? The Beehive and the Jungle Temple are very short regions. Um, they're not full-fledged levels. They're more like the prison depths in Dead Cells. Right? Well, you can go there, and they are an extra level, but they are very short levels. And you were confused about the underground. What about it? What do you mean? Oh, I think what I'm going to do for the underground is it's going to be you unlock a meta upgrade between runs, uh, like a pickaxe that would allow you to just dig down to the underworld from the forest, going through a particular region that's blocked off at the beginning, and that would be its own separate path. That could connect back up with things later. That would eventually probably lead down to the caverns, or maybe the underground could lead to your choice of either three. Um, but it's not kind of part of this main progression. There'll be multiple final bosses in different areas. And like Hand of the King is not the only final boss. Uh, After unlocking hard mode, potentially, but right now, no. Right now, the Wall of Flesh is the final boss. Underground place to caverns, ruins factory, and underground leads to caverns. I mean, I like this layout. I think this is good. Um, I'm content with this. And that's mainly what I wanted to plan out on stream today. I gotta go get food soon, so I'm not gonna be able to keep streaming. I think that's gonna be it for the day. Uh, yeah. It can be changed later. We can add on extra areas. We can think about it. But I like this as a draft. As a good concept, it makes sense. It's got the bosses laid out. We flow from one to another. It works pretty well. So yeah, I will probably be finishing up Flare Gun Moonlord tomorrow, depending on how I'm feeling exactly. But that's my plan for now. So yeah, bye everyone.